All right, we're finally back with the 1994 Honda Cr125 dirt bike. So we picked this thing up a couple weeks ago for $1,550. The seller actually upped the price because so many people wanted it, so he says. And he said in the description that this thing was running and driving before it was put away 6 years ago. So it's been sitting for a while, and he said, you know, go through the carb, change out the oil, do some basic maintenance, and it should run. So we got back home and kicked it over for the first time, and we saw that the rod bearing was completely gone. Look at that. So we ended up tearing apart the whole thing and found that the piston was junk as well. And we ended up splitting the cases on it to get the crank out and found that all the bearings were junk. So that was awesome. So this $1,500 bike turned into a over $2,000 bike pretty quick. So we ordered up all the bearings for it, transmission bearings and the crank bearings. Those are all in the freezer, ready to go. So we got new bearings, new crank, new gasket kit, new air filter. What else do we have in here? New air filter cage, new sprockets, new chain. Here's the piston for it. New seals. By the end of this video, we should have a nice running and driving 1994 Honda Cr125. So let's get going with this build, and hopefully we can fire this thing up soon. All right, obviously we're gonna start with the cases here. There's some metal flakes in the bottom end when we took it apart from that rod bearing right in here. So what we're gonna do is get all these bearings out, all the seals out, and replace everything. There's that seal, one of the crank seals, and then we've got another one on the other side here. This one was already kind of coming out. There's that seal. So now we can pound out these bearings. All right, just pushing these bearings out here. Shouldn't take a whole lot of force. That bearing came out. So there's the old crank bearing. You can see that is just toast. Really, really bad. Barely spins. So we'll get the next one out now. Yeah, that crank bearing junk as well. You can hear it. So I don't know if water got in there or what, but it is pretty bad. So now we can clean these out and heat these up and get the new bearings in. I'm gonna work on the transmission bearings after that. All right, we've got the bearings in the freezer. Just gonna apply a little heat here. See if this will drop right in here. Oh no. All right, we just pressed that bearing in, bottomed out. That was good to go. The heat and the freezer did not work that time. Usually it drops right in, but bearing feels really nice and smooth. So I'll work on the next one. That one's not working either. Man, those bearings are pushing in pretty hard. Nice and smooth though. But yeah, it took a lot of force to get that in. So, it's in though. Let's work on that transmission bearings. Alright, that one's got a new bearing, nice and smooth. We're gonna go through, take all the old ones out, and get the new ones pressed in. Alright, we got all the bearings in. Here are all the old bearings, you can see. So every single bearing was replaced along with the seals, so. Got everything is brand new in here, nice and smooth. So we're gonna lube everything up with some assembly lube here. Get some of this going. The bearings feel really good. Alright, so for the crank seal, you can see there's a flat side like that, and there's a side with a spring. So the rule of thumb is if you're separating the crank from the oil, the spring goes towards the oil. But if you're separating from the atmosphere, the air, on the other side, the spring goes towards the crank. So for this one, oil's gonna be sitting in the transmission right here. So we put the flat side facing down so you can see the spring. So let's push that in. And then with the other one, you're gonna be facing it the opposite way. So the spring is going to be facing towards the crank this time, with the flat end up. Perfect. There's a washer on the back side of here. We don't want to have that fall off. it slid into place there. So we've got the skinny end goes down, then there's shift fork R and shift fork L. They're gonna go on like that, and then we have the single shift fork. This one looks like C is gonna go this way. Last shift fork going in. It's the middle one. Now let's spin smoothly. We've got the crank going in. This is the new one. Rod bearing's good. That's what the seller said at least. It feels good, no up and down movement on the crank. So let's get that in. There it goes. All right, let's get this case gasket on. I can use a little bit of the ultra black. Just a very small amount. Just to hold this gasket in place for us. Gasket on. Make sure the transmission's spinning good. Everything's perfect. So let's get this in. All right, now we can hopefully press this in place here. Slowly working its way on. All right, case halves are together. I took WD-40, went around the whole case and scraped off all the dirt. It's just some of the paint is flaking off, so it looks like dirt. Now you can see the transmission spins smoothly. Crank spins smoothly. All right, so the little shift star right here has a little groove in it right there. It's gonna line up with the ball right there. So you can get this in. Now we're slowly gonna rotate this until it bottoms out here, then you can crank on it and tighten this up. Alright, that's good. Now the shifting mechanism is going to go on. You can see these compress and then they pivot. So what we you can do is install it. Let's see, so it's gonna be like this. You can compress these right there. And you're good to go. That. There. So you can see the spacer right here. That goes into the crankshaft and gets tightened down by the crank seal. Then the gear goes on. Then your washer and your bolt. Alright, we got the shifter on. We went through all the gears. That all looks good. Everything's smooth. We got the kickstart gear on and then the kickstart mechanism here. So that's all on. Let's get the clutch on next. Just go in like that. Then we have our washer. Little ball that goes in there. And then this will go right in there like that. All right, next the pressure plate goes on here. Just like that. Get your springs on. And there should be a marking. Yep, there's an arrow right there. So we can put this on. We'll have to line up the arrow with the correct spot here. It's a little tricky to see. Alright, so the arrow is going to line up with the mark right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. There's an arrow on the case, it's black. It's really hard to see. Let's see if I can get a flashlight. There we go. Arrow right there, lines up with the line right there on the stator. Make sure that line is perfect. Perfect. Looks good right there. Washer goes on. Nut goes on. Alright, we're working on getting these power valves out because we're going to be honing this cylinder, and you can see how complicated these power valves are. Get the other side too. So everything has to be perfect in there. So we're going to start by taking some of these bolts out. Little stopper plates in there. and we'll see if we can get these things out of there. All right, we were able to get the power valves out. It was a little tricky, so we'll go through the process of putting them back in. Taking them out was not super easy, but here we go. Got them right here. There's not too many moving pieces, so we should be fine putting it back together. As long as I can remember where everything goes. Hopefully we can. So I can kind of already see the cross hatches, so it won't take much to hone this thing out. And we'll just put a little bit of the 2-stroke oil on the cylinder before honing. And we'll just get some of that in there. Perfect. And we took out the power valves because that honing material gets everywhere. See that honing material there? This gets all into the ports and everything, but you can see how nice that is. Alright, we're just going to dunk the cylinder in some soapy water here. We've got a wire brush here we're going to use on it. We've got our softer brush here for the ports. Get it in there. Alright, cylinder's all cleaned up. Take a look at the new piston here. That's going to fit perfectly. See what the rings look like. Alright, so this one does have a T on it, so that's going to be facing up on the piston when we install the ring. Got our circlips here. Got our pin. I think that's all we need. So this one did not come with the holes drilled for the exhaust bridge, so we're gonna have to do that too. But this has an exhaust bridge right here, so you should have holes drilled in the piston right here. Let's see what we're dealing with here. Looks like it's gonna be pretty good. Alright, you can see how small that ring gap is there. Yep, exactly 14 thousandths on the ring gap. So that's perfect. Alright, so in order to find where to drill the holes for the exhaust bridge right here, we want to install the cylinder onto the piston with no rings. And we can line it up and see where that bridge is. Just like that. Alright, we put the piston to the top of the cylinder there, top dead center. Now we can look through the exhaust and you can see the bridge up there. So we're going to take a permanent marker and draw 2 lines on either side of that bridge to mark where we need to draw our holes. Alright, so we've got our lines here on the piston, and I marked out 2 holes for where I'm going to drill. So you want to start with 0.3 inches below the first ring line, right there, and then 0.375 inches below the first dot for the second dot. So we mark those out, and you want to use a drill bit size that's going to be 0.06 inches. So just quick measure this between 0.06 and 0.09. So we're at 0.076. So we should be good with that. So there's one hole. So 2 holes. Now, what we're gonna do is just sand that down a little bit. So get those burrs off of there. All right, we sanded down those burrs, took an air compressor, blew through those, got all the metal shavings out of there. So everything is good to go there. So we are done with the piston. Let's start working on assembling those power valves. So the shaft is going to go through the left side over here, push all the way through to here, just like that. So this one is for the right side here. Quick clean that up a little bit. This is gonna fit right in here. That. We'll temporarily get that in. Here's this little gear. Don't think it matters which way. Just like that. And then we have to get this in. So this is what activates those power valves. Through here like this. And then it's a little tricky. You're dealing with so many components here. Everything has to line up perfectly. There we go. Now you push that power valve all the way in so it bottoms out there. Just like that. It's going to go on. Sorry, it's a little hard to see. All right, and this is going to go right like that. Now you want that power valve pushed all the way in, and we're going to lock this in place here. So get our Allen, lock that in. Remember, power valve's all the way in. So power valve is in all the way. That is pushed all the way up. Now when you do it, you can see it moves the power valve out as you push down. That's what you want. So now the other side, All right, then we did the same thing for the other side. Slid the power valve in, got this gear to go in, and then the power valve's all the way closed. We locked it off with the stopper there, and then we put the Allen screw in there to tighten it down. So now, watch this. Everything's moving perfectly. So that's all good to go. All right, little gasket maker on here. It's a very thin layer. All right, that looks pretty good. Go like this. Here's the old piston that was in it, and as you can see, there's no exhaust bridge holes there. So I'm thinking maybe that's what failed first. You can see the line going down right there. So maybe it got hot, the ring stuck out, and then hit the exhaust port there. Because the ring was supposed to be way back here, but it was over here, the gap. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it failed by the exhaust port, and that caused all the problems. So hopefully with the new holes drilled in the new piston, we will avoid that. Get that nice and lubed up here. Pin's already lubed. Go on like this. Just like that. We'll get our other circlip in and then get the cylinder on. Alright, cylinder going on. Make sure our ring is compressed properly here. It's a little easier with just one ring like that. Alright, that's pretty smooth. Alright, get our head gasket on here. Just like that. And I went ahead, cleaned up the head with a Dremel, polished that up. There's just a couple dings in there. So now we can get this bolted down. Hopefully the head doesn't leak. If it does, we'll have to shave that down a bit. I don't think it will. It wasn't leaky before. And we'll get the torque specs on these. Alright, let's get this engine in. Everything is put back together. Let's see if she goes in here. Alright, engine is in the frame, all the coolant lines are hooked up, we got a spark plug in there, engine is bolted down. Now we have to do the carburetor, Gotta do the air filter, get some fluids in here, and we'll attempt the first start. It's coming together. So we bought the bike with the missing cage and the missing air filter, so we bought a brand new one here. Came with the bolt and everything. Alright, so we'll get the air filter all oiled up. Let's see if it came pre-oiled. I don't think it did. Oh yeah, it's pre-oiled. Cool. Like that. Goes down like this. Alright, air filter is installed, looking good. Alright, we got the old chain off. You can see how bad this thing is. Just really, really stiff. So we got brand new chain and sprockets. Got a new chain for it. Let's open that up. A little too long. We're gonna cut that. Hopefully, master link lines up here. Boom. Perfect. Alright, let's take a look on the inside of the carburetor. I think we did this last video, but we didn't clean it out. So, yeah, it looks pretty clean actually. Maybe we did clean it. A little bit of gunk in there. Too bad. So that bowl looks good. That piece comes out. Yep, comes right out. Float seems good. Needle looks pretty good. Awesome. Here. Let's see what we're running for a main here. 172 for the main. And we're running a 58 for the pilot. That was clear as well. How about the air screw here? One turn out on the air screw. Air screw needs to be cleaned up a bit. But that's pretty much it. The choke is acting kind of weird. Yeah, it's pretty gunked up, look at that. There, now it's working. I think the throttle was like all the way up on this. Now we'll blow that out, clean up that carb nice, and install that. Alright, whole bike is back together. Let's get some oil in it. This is gonna take, what does this say? 650 milliliters of oil going in. Just using some 10W40 wet clutch oil. Dump that in. All right, mix up some 40-to-1. Let's dump that in. Coolant in here. Hopefully it holds. We don't have any leaking. All right, let's see what happens. Choke it. right, we're leaking coolant. Let's see where that's coming from. But she fired up. It's leaking out of the head. So it looks like our head gasket's failing, or our head's warped, or cylinder's warped, unfortunately. So looks like we have to tear down the whole thing again, at least the head, and see where that's coming from. I think it's coming from the cylinder. That's why there's all that gasket maker on the head, I bet, when we tore this thing down. It all makes sense now. So it's just spraying out right here. It's pretty bad. Let's see if I can start it up. Hopefully you guys could see that. It's spraying pretty bad. So we were gonna have to take the head off again and see if we can fix that. All right, we took the plug out. I'm kicking it over. I don't see any coolant coming out of it. So I think it's just leaking on the outside, which is good, but I don't want any leaking at all. So let's get this whole head off next. Sounds like it was running pretty good though. Alright, let's see. Gasket's not pinched or anything. Maybe the surface of the cylinder is bad. Alright, just got done sanding the head. There's no low spots at all on there, so I think it's something with the cylinder. I don't think it's the head. Alright, I think we found the problem. Check this out. Let's see if I can zoom. I see like a couple scratches. See that? See those little indents? I think I can get my nail in there. Yeah. So I don't know how that would have happened. I think maybe when the guy put the studs in, he bottomed it out too much and it made that indent, because it's the same right there too. And that's right where the coolant was leaking. Look at that. Just a little scratch right there and right there. So I don't know if we have to send the cylinder out and get just the top of it shaved off. We might have to do that. Just like a 1/2 millimeter. That will definitely raise compression, but I think that's really the only option we have at this point. For the time being, I want to see if this thing runs good and drives good, so we're going to use a little gasket maker like the guy did, put the gasket back on and see if that prevents it from leaking. It probably won't, because there's a lot of pressure that gasket has to hold, but we'll just test it and see. Yeah, that really sucks. I don't know how that happened. But over here looks really good. Just right there. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Right there. And right there. So we'll get some gasket maker on there and slap the head back on. Alright, it's the next day. We let that gasket maker dry on the head there. So let's fill this thing up with coolant and see if it still leaks. Obviously we have to tear it back down and shave off part of that cylinder. But for now, we'll see if it shifts through the gears, has power, and see if this thing runs good. All right, made it out to the land. Let's do a little test drive with it, see how it goes. Alright, it's not leaking at all, so we can take this thing for a little test drive. Well, it's running great. The sound of this two-stroke is amazing. And usually they say right when it sounds this good, it's about to blow up. So I think we're running a little bit lean on the top end there. We might richen up that jet because it does have an aftermarket pipe, so that makes sense. We'll put a bigger main jet in there. On the low end, it's a little boggy, so we're gonna make the pilot a little bit leaner. So we'll probably, instead of a 58, we'll put a 55 in there, and that should take care of that problem. It's just like a slight bog on takeoff. All right, it's looking pretty good, all cleaned up. Pretty sweet looking bike. But hope the guys enjoyed the video on this one. Picking it up, diagnosing it, tearing it down, rebuilding it, and taking it for the first ride. Definitely very satisfying hearing a two-stroke startup for the first time after sitting many, many years. So this one is pretty cool. I'm happy we ended up rebuilding it, even though we paid $1,550 for it, blown up. I think it's still well worth over $2,000 in my opinion. Really, really cool bike, and they're getting hard to find. So next video we will get that cylinder shaved down about 0.5 millimeter to match up with the head, get a new gasket for it, jet this thing up, and it should be good to go for many years to come. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next video, and until next time, we are out.